Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today is Tom Walls. He's with the Firearms Academy of Seattle. I've known Tom for a very long time. Tom, this is a Training Friday, and I wanted to start off with, I want to still share a little bit of news today. And let me go ahead and get that story pulled up here. This is off of KBIA.com. And the story is Missouri is pushing forward a law. I wish I could say this was a good law. Unfortunately, I wish there weren't a reason for this law. It's the law. They're trying to make it a law where you cannot just fire. They're calling it celebratory gunfire. You cannot fire into the air indiscriminately. Apparently there's a problem with this, and let me go ahead and quote the sponsor of the bill. This is Representative Roger Weedy. Called it common sense. It would accomplish this by making it a crime to discharge a firearm with criminal negligence in or into the limits of any municipality. People violating the law would be charged with unlawful use of a weapon. First offense would be a misdemeanor, and subsequent offenses would be felonies. There would be certain exemptions, including for self-defense, supervised shooting ranges, lawful hunting, for control of nuisance wildlife, the duties of animal control officers, and with permission of the local police chief. This is the latest. The story goes on. This is the latest attempt to pass Blair's Law. It's a name for a young lady who unfortunately passed away when she was hit by a round that was fired into the air indiscriminately. Tom, you and I talked a little bit about this off air. 4 basic rules of gun safety. One of those 4 rules: always know your backstop and what lies beyond it. You don't just fire your firearm into the air.
Paul, it's good to be with you again. Yeah, rule number 4 from the gun sight rules, my favorite set. Always know what you're shooting at. It's worded different ways, but always identify your target. Always know your backstop. Air is not a backstop. A cliche in our business is that every bullet has a lawyer attached to it. I would hate to be the one that was celebrating something, stupidly fired in the air, and find out that a quarter mile east of me, some little kid had a bullet hit them coming down out of the gun that I had perhaps fired. I think the law has some uses. I'm looking beyond the emotional parts of it, and Diane and I had that discussion over ritual morning coffee. She is very, can I put this nicely, adamant about new laws not serving any purpose. I can see that this one adds some teeth. My concern, though, Paul, how are they going to enforce it? Mm-hmm. Okay, in my state, it's if a misdemeanor, which means it's subject to less than a year in jail, or fine, or both, depending what the test cases come up with. If it's a misdemeanor, and if in that state they also have to witness it, I'm not sure how you can actually file a charge. So the question becomes, is it a useful law that will actually prevent this? Or are they wasting legislative time and money to feel good like I did something about this tragic death?
Yeah.
What do you think?
You know, I think it could be the latter. I think it could be a little girl lost their life and so they want to feel like they've done something.
I can't say that that's a bad thing to want to. The second question is, does it burden law-abiding gun owners in any way? I'm looking. Again, the wife and I disagree on this, as we tend to do. I'm not seeing it. I wonder if we have any viewers up at this point can add in what they see as a burden to a law-abiding gun owner for this law.
I'm failing to find a burden, because I'm going to say right now, if you think that it's anything but an asinine idea to point your firearm any direction but directly down or directly at a safe target or directly at a bad guy and release a round, then you need to have a serious talking to done to you.
Really, you need to know where that bullet's going to go. I mean, we, as responsible gun owners, we use these things to hunt, to kill things. We know that they can and they do. We need to have that sense of responsibility and awareness of what's around us to be able to put that round someplace. Now, I'm not going to tell you that here at Browncoat Manor, we'll rip off a magazine happy. We don't get to have full auto in the state of Washington, but we can make a lot of noise in a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have places to do that. I live in a rural enough place that Diane and I have facilities where we can safely shoot. We've got a custom-built berm. We were talking off air about the anthills I have. If I need to test fire a gun, I live in a situation I can walk outdoors into an anthill, safe backstop, good to go. That's not the situation in cities, and I think that's what this law, this proposed law addresses, is in or into, which was a nice piece of wording, into a municipality.
Right.
With lots of people that you can't see behind sheetrock or behind a wall. The libertarian in me says laws no. The practical person says if there's no burden. I can't get a lot of heartburn about this one personally.
Yeah, and I'm going to say myself, there are people that have witnessed me rapid, and I mean very rapid firing, emptying a magazine in a training situation where it was the end of the day and I was the last one going down the line. The situation required me to fire one round out of a magazine. I had a full magazine, and I took full advantage of the fact. And it was caught on film, and I'm sure I was caught on camera. That I'm sure it's been circulated. But there's been times I've celebrated, but it's been into a safe backstop.
It's a wonderful thing to do. A mad minute can be a good thing if you do it thoughtfully and safely.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can be expensive. It's expensive as sin right now.
Oh yeah, it wasn't cheap when I did it, but I don't know that I could afford to do it at all now. Yeah.
Well, from a trainer's point of view, I can also say it's nice if you are at a place where and indoor ranges typically disallow this. If you're somewhere where you can safely, say on a timer, run off X number of rounds and see how quickly you can shoot and still hit your target. You need to know that outer limit. So there can be a use for that. But pure celebratory gunfire, I prefer shotgun anyway because it makes more noise.
Yes, it does.
It
gives you a lot more attention as well.
Yes, and not disturbing my neighbors late at night. I have trouble finding, as I said, any heartburn with that.
Absolutely. Let me check to see if we're getting any comments. And you know what? Nobody's disagreeing with us. We're not getting any comments. So
I suspect the audience that you draw in is mostly responsible gun owners.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and transition then, and let's talk a little bit about the topic we really wanted to dig into today, and that is situational awareness, and get into the training kind of portion of when you and I get together. The greatest majority, I believe, of defensive gun uses can be avoided if you are out in public, and you don't have to go. A lot of people take this to an extreme that are in our community. You don't have to go to an extreme if you just keep your eyes open and watch what's going on around you. I like to do what I call playing a little game with it. What would I do if X happened now?
The what if game.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. Colonel Jeff Cooper, and those of you that don't know him, it's worth your time to look him up. The founder of Gunsight had a series of color code awarenesses. If you go to Gunsight or look at some of his stuff online or read his literature, the color codes are not states of physical readiness. They're paying attention. Condition white is basically a cell phone zombie whose whole world is right here, who is not aware of what's going around him, where he is, all that stuff. They're the fun ones to watch that walk into doors and into traffic. He has a condition above that called condition yellow, and has postulated that You can stay in condition yellow 24/7 with no ill effects. Condition yellow is actively looking at your environment, and this is what situational awareness is. You have to be looking at stuff, but you have to know what you see. Anyone that says, yes, I have situational awareness, I'm aware of my environment, so I'm good, is lying to themselves. You need to be actively looking at what's going on. You have to actively be seeking it. It's like being in a vacation in a really cool place. I used to like Disneyland before it got all political, and I'd go, wow, that's neat. Oh, cool, there's this little thing that I'm not supposed to see, but some craftsman did that, and this had to go into it. And you're actively seeking this out, and you're engaged in your environment. Absent going to Disneyland, it's a lot like driving in traffic, which you know a little bit about.
Mm-hmm.
That red car's coming up real fast behind me. I might want to move over because he looks stupid. I'm going to lose that lane over there. I might want to move now while it's easy. You're looking, you're recognizing what you see, you're keeping up with it, and you're starting to look for things that aren't normal. And that's where it starts. It's a lot like medicine. You call your doc, something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but this ain't right. This ain't right, because I'm paying attention. It's out of the normal. There's a wonderful book called Left of Bang that was published a couple years ago, and I lost my copy for some reason. Jason Riley and Patrick Van Horn, the Marine Corps, uses it, and they're talking about what's not normal. If the events of bad things happening start here, and they progress to, they were talking about IEDs in Afghanistan, and then bang. And then at that point, after the bang, as we move to the right, like we read left to right, we do the sequelae and figure out what happened, how do we fix it, oh my God, I need a tourniquet. Let's start to the other side of bang before and maybe prevent this happening. And that starts with knowing what's normal. Now, Paul, you've been on the planet for what, 30, 35 years now? You look like you're a little old.
I think I'm at 17. I'm the 17th edition of my 35th year.
Oh, good. So I got socks older than you, son. But anyway, what I was saying was that you get a baseline, whatever your culture or that culture or your neighborhood or whatever, you know what normal looks like. And you can pick something out because it just stands out. You automatically know what not normal is. At which point you go, I don't know what that is yet, but that ain't right. And in condition yellow, you're starting to pay attention. I'm going to watch it a little more closely. The car that's kind of bumping the fog line, the classic case of being summertime and some dude by himself is in a long coat. It just stands out.
Yeah.
So you need to be honest that you need to be looking. You need to see stuff, and then you need to know what it is you're seeing. Can you interpret it? Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network, as part of their educational program, puts out an awesome video on, what do they call it, pre-attack indicators, part of their educational part of the membership to ACLDN. And pre-attack indicators could be, and I've actually had this happen, Diane and I had this happen in Vegas. Dude's way far away in a fringe area, and he's looking around, and then he focuses on us. Well, I'm looking at him, so that's got my attention, because that's not normal. And then he does this. And saunters up to us. Okay, so he was looking for witnesses.
Right.
Checking distance to us. Patting to make sure he had his, turns out, in a pocket knife. And then saunters on up to us and then proceeds with that. It was textbook. If you know what's going on, you can start to work your plan. Do you have a plan, first off? I know you and Susan live the armed lifestyle. I would bet that you have a basic default thing. Hey, honey, we got something going on.
Yeah.
It's neat to read the news and see what other people did or did not do well. When our son was living with us, he's old and out of the house now, we had a code word as a house that studied and taught martial arts. Before he was able to jump in, the code word meant get in a certain position. We made a triangle. We were in downtown Portland one day, downtown Portland, Oregon, middle of the afternoon, lots and lots and lots of people at the outdoor festival, and there's these three young citizens that were walking around, looked across the street at us, turned and headed toward us. I forget which one of us, Diane or I, saw that. made eye contact with them, and at the same time, which one of us it was, called a code word. We formed a defensive triangle protecting our son, made direct eye contact with them, and they went from going to us to turning and going away.
There you go.
We avoided that fight. Like you said, that awareness. It's those little things. You don't even know how many in your life you do and how many fights you avoid. But if you're looking at stuff, you know what it is you're looking at, you can develop a plan and you can go from there. But you've got to be actively engaged. So you talked about the what if plan. Mm-hmm. Favorite thing is, especially when a group of instructors go out to dinner after a class, part of the game is to see who we can make sit down with their back to the door. Okay, I do not like to sit with my back to a door. I got my back to the room now. Diane's outside. I trust her. We've got systems in place. I'll have warning. But in a restaurant, I see somebody that's foolish enough to carry open, which is a whole nother conversation, and their back's to a door. I'm going, probably shouldn't interrupt their dinner and give them a business card, but I hope that someday that something good happens before something bad happens.
Yeah,
you learn with the what ifs. How many doors are there? Where are they? Where are they? Where's the doors? How do I get out of where I am? The shooting recently in New York City in the subway.
Yes.
Okay. Good example of you got to think outside the box to get outside the box, right? You've got the doors to the other car, which apparently were locked or secured somehow. You've got the doors to get on the platform. You start thinking about other stuff. Did people take cover? A few did. A few stood out there with their cell phones in, condition
and
white.
Filmed it, yeah.
It's amazing. Most people just kind of stood there with their thumbs up their noses. And a few more got video out. Well, the video is nice to have, but you're standing and there's rounds going in your direction. Some people were smart and took cover. Okay, good for them. That's thinking. And then there was one gentleman, I understand from sources he was a military vet, you know who I'm talking about, actually got down and started applying pressure to that gentleman.
Yeah. And was putting a makeshift tourniquet on too. Yes, absolutely.
That was situational awareness, and then a personal decision to take risks to save human life.
Yeah, amazing.
All kinds of stuff people do.
And literally, hats off to the guy.
Definitely. He should never have to buy a beer in any bar he goes in.
Should never have to. And I want to step back just a little bit. In the very first firearms, before I ever took my very first firearms course, Kathy Jackson, who was the very first professional instructor I ever went to for firearms, she did a firearms retention class, and as part of that firearms retention class, she was talking about situational awareness. And my introduction to it was, she said, your spidey sense will start tingling. Something will tell you there's just something not right here. And
I don't know what it is, but something ain't right.
Right. And I have noticed that so many times since then. It's been a number of years now, but there's something just not very kosher going on over there. I think I'm going to give myself extra room over here. And
it doesn't cost you anything to do that.
Yeah. And 99 times out of 100, I've given myself extra space. I maybe didn't need to, but I'm really glad I did.
How many times have cops taken reports? Well, I didn't feel right, but in our society we have these rules. We need to be polite, we need to make eye contact with people, and we don't want to bend those rules. Women especially are taught not to be rude, and they will do things sometimes, God bless them, that get them into trouble because they don't want to break the rules they were raised by. The women that you and I associate with, self-aware, self-actualized, dare I use the word empowered, women have no trouble being rude, or at least aggressive and abrasive. My wife has done that to panhandlers just they bounce off her invisible shield wall if they get aggressive. Otherwise, she's very pleasant. Part of having that plan is giving yourself permission to do that. Part of that plan would also involve the people that you regularly associate with. If you associate with an armed person, work together and say, okay, under these circumstances, I think what if is probably a good way to do that. If you are with a person that's not armed, and I think I'd be okay using Kathy Jackson again as an example because she uses this in her class. She was the armed person between she and her husband. Her husband is a wonderful guy, EMT, someone that I seek advice from because he's such a cool guy. But he was not the gun guy. He could run one. So Kathy's job, if there was a threat, was to do the armed thing, to cover their retreat or to get them out or do what she needed to do. Her husband's job was to wrangle their 5 kids because her husband is just one big muscle. That was their job, and they planned it and they practiced it, and that worked for them. Mm-hmm. Diane and I have a thing, this guy I told you about in Vegas that came up and did the interview. The short form of that story is he paid no attention to my female partner, who had a knife out behind her leg ready to do whatever she needed to do, never got shown, ended peacefully, and he went on his business and bothered somebody else. But we had a plan because we talked about that.
Yeah.
I strongly urge you to do that. Another thing that we do is I always know what her gear is and where she's carrying it. I mean, we're together for so long that I always know what she has just by looking at her because I can see where she's carrying. She's only got 2 places she generally carries. But we know, I'll say, what do you have? And we tend to name our guns because we're that eccentric. And also I can talk about a gun in public without using the G word. No, I'm not going to say what those names are on
sure.
podcast, but they're whimsical and they're cute and they mean something to us. When I know that I can swap magazines with her if I need to. If she's down, I know where to grab her gun if I need it. We can both run each other's firearms. We make sure we always do that. That's part of the plan. Another part of the plan is having good everyday care. We talk about EDC on the web.
Right.
Oh, my EDC. And then somebody will put up a picture of all their security implements. I never quite understood that. I'm going to tell you what I'm carrying it and where I carry and all the... No. I usually, if somebody's doing a page full of that, I'll put up a picture of a blank wall and say, this is not it. But you need
Same
to have
thing I will, I used to do this every once in a while. When the big thing was Snapchat, when it was first coming out, I hear everybody's putting up nudes, so I'd take my camera, I'd say, I'm going to do you all a favor, I'm going to post a nude picture, and I'd do this with my camera, and that's how I'd post my nude. I'd cover the camera up, take a picture, just posted a nude picture in the dark for you. There you go. So, they don't need to know what I'm carrying, but I will say this. Susan and I carry the exact same model of gun and caliber of gun because our hands mine are a little bit larger, but I can still comfortably carry what she perfectly carries. And we have 2 different models that we carry. She is very good at 2 models of gun, and I can work them very well. And so when we go out together in public, we usually carry the exact same gun.
We have something similar. I would say about 2/3 of the time we're carrying the same gun. And we know that ahead of time. So God forbid, in that unlikely chance that I need to get to her gun or her magazines, I know what's going on. Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought about what you need to carry minimally? This is worth mentioning if you're going to be ready for situations. Remember that self-defense situations, as I think it's Tom Gibbons taught us this, it's a come-as-you-are event, and there's no prioritization. You got what you got, and the bad guys are going to ambush you and give you as little chance as you can to respond, which is another reason to be situationally aware, to give you some time or at least some warning. As far as what you have, we teach and we practice this religiously. We have a minimum number of things that we carry with us. We always carry a firearm in a good holster. Mm-hmm. secure. It doesn't move. The gun doesn't move around. If it's in a pocket, it's a pocket holster that covers the trigger guard safely. Nothing else is in that pocket to get in the way or get on the trigger. Pocket holsters you probably need to take out of the pocket to reholster, but that's really not an issue. It's not a range thing. We have spare ammo. If we're carrying a revolver, it's usually a speed strip or sometimes a speed loader. Speed strips are a little more convenient for me. Definitely a spare magazine. It's always nice to have the ammo. It's also the quickest way to reduce a malfunction, mostly for that. Those I can hide in plain sight sometimes. I will tell you this little trick. I've got a small semi-automatic pistol. The magazine for that fits perfectly in a Leatherman pouch. But that's still the gray man thing. I'm not openly carrying something like that. So magazine, spare ammo, a flashlight. I have used a flashlight as a defensive tool. I would work as a pharmacist nights in big box chain stores and go out at night, and people would know that I had keys to that pharmacy. And if people would come up in the parking lot, hey, you got the time? I literally had people ask me for cigarette lights and the time, and hey, I want to talk to you. It's amazing what a couple hundred lumens in their eyeballs will do. That was my early warning system. If they came past that, I knew they had bad intent.
Well, a couple hundred lumens and a sidestep, and they're still going to be looking at the light. Meanwhile, you are a little ways away, and their attention is still where the light was.
If it turned out it was nothing, I can apologize. Oh, sir, I'm really sorry you startled me. And if it's a bad guy, what's he going to do? Officer, he shined a light in my face before I tried to rob him. I figured I was good to go. But that was my perimeter, and that was my first test. But and of course, to identify a target, and you're a rock star if the copy machine goes down. But the last thing that people tend to forget, they'll talk about knives and pepper spray, and that's all great stuff. You got to have a cell phone.
Yeah.
Because part of your situational awareness is being able to tell the cops where you are.
Well, and John has a great question. He says, "Should you also carry mace?" I'm gonna say OC spray because there's bear spray, there's pepper spray, there's this, that, the other. Where do you think? Where does Tom put that?
John, I think that's a great idea. And now, just to differentiate, mace is like tear gas, and it's not instantly effective. Pepper spray or OC, oleocapsicum, an irritant, is effective, and I would recommend the OC hands down. I'd stay with a major name, Sabre or POM, P-O-M, or some of the better ones. Bear spray looks really cool, and if it's good enough for bears, actually it's a little less potent because their noses are more sensitive. With the bear spray, you've also got capacity and range. OC is a great thing to carry. It gives you something on that spectrum between empty hands, and not all of us have empty hand skills or even want to get them because that's kind of close. That's up close and personal. Or to use lethal force, I think that's a great filler. If you've had some training, if you can, or at least practiced, so you know what types of sprays versus fogs, and you get an idea what it's like. If you've actually been sprayed in a class, better still, then you can articulate why you used that. I think that's got a wonderful place in it. Been known to pack one.
I will say this: if any of our listeners for podcast or viewers on YouTube, Facebook, and OpsLens, if you are a Lyft or Uber driver or something like that, and you are carrying OC spray, please don't ever release that thing in the vehicle if you're still in the vehicle, because you're going to get it too. You're going to get a dose of it too, and it's not pleasant stuff.
It's not.
I've been involved in training with it, and I've gotten a taste of it, and it's you're going to be hating life for a little while if you get a taste of it, especially in the eyes.
It's one reason I still wear glasses, even though I could wear contacts. I want something. They also act as safety glasses. Being sprayed at least once is an experience everybody should have. I'll give you 2 words: baby shampoo. Good way to get rid of it. It's not fun, but it's not lethal. In my experience and other people's experience, those of us that are fair-haired and blue-eyed react much more strongly to it.
Okay.
That's another thing, which way the wind's blowing.
There's, there are a lot of. I'm not a huge fan of. We occasionally the question will come up. What about a taser or the contact version of the my brain isn't working.
Contact does it all. I understand that when you say taser, that means prongs that go out on wires with some distance. Typically 15 feet. Law enforcement has a capacity of, I think, up to 21 feet. And they spread, and both prongs have to make contact. They're like a little number 6 fish hook. That, when they work great.
Uh-huh.
Not 100%. There are ways past them. And then and they're expensive. If you go to the contact thing, the little crackly thing, and that'll drop them down. TV tells us that it will make someone unconscious. It doesn't. I will say they are damned annoying. I've been hit with them in training, and it's like, that hurts. It may discourage some people. It may piss some people off. I don't recommend them because, as you very correctly pointed out, it's a contact weapon. Yep. If I'm going to be that close to somebody, I want my hands free so I can do my hands-on thing.
Yeah.
Rather than that. And of course, if it drops, then there's that weapon that's free in the game that may be used against you.
And you've just made them incredibly angry.
Incredibly angry.
Yeah. So I do not know if they can be considered lethal weapons or not, but your next step absolutely is a lethal weapon if you've got one.
Well, it's that old thing. If all your only tool is a hammer, all your problems look like nails. A good trainer in a class, if they talk about tactical, and when I say tactical, I mean how you're moving, how you're acting, what you're doing, in addition to using the weapon itself. A good trainer will include in scenario training a scenario where not shooting would be a viable answer. Mm. Sometimes there's more than one way to handle a good training scenario if the trainer's designed it well. But often not shooting is good. Leaving is one of my very best favorite tactics.
And that's where
nobody gets hurt. That's one of my very favorite outcomes. I don't like getting hurt.
That's where we come full circle, and situational awareness can absolutely help you with that. I've never lost a fight I haven't been in.
Wonderful segue. Yeah. It's ancient wisdom. You can sit here and quote people all day long. The greatest battle won is the one never fought. All that kind of stuff. I'm getting old and beat up enough that I know that I'm going to hurt the next day, and I really don't like it. I just as soon leave. There's one thing I talked about, things to carry in your everyday carry: your gun, your ammo, your flashlight, and your cell phone, so you can call the police and tell them where you are. There's one thing you absolutely need to leave out of your everyday carry religiously. Always leave your ego at home. Ego will get you in more trouble than any single thing I can think of. I have a right to be here. Well, yeah, but you can't make me do that. Yeah, but it's like walking down the crosswalk and expecting the magic white lines not to protect you from being hit by the vehicle. And I was in the crosswalk is going to sound real stupid while they're setting the bone.
Yep, it is. It is. Well, big shot. Tom and I went over time.
Don't we really? Yeah.
So, Tom, again, great talk. Thanks, man, for stepping in doing this, man. I really love talking with you.
Pleasure, Paul. You can tell that it's something that I believe in. I think, like all of us do, all of us on the podcast.
All right, folks. I want to thank you for taking your time out to spend time with us today. I encourage you strongly. Stop by tomorrow, noon Central Time. We're going to be. It's going to be a really great weekend show we've got planned. We've got Beth Alcazar, we've got Tony Simon, and we've got Charlie Cook. They're going to be along for the weekend edition of The Bullet. We'll be reviewing the stories of the week, and with those three, I don't think I'm going to have to talk at all. I'll just introduce the show, and I'll come back in an hour and shut it down. So Thanks for joining us today, and please come join us again tomorrow. Until then, thanks for watching, everybody.